Hey there, internets. So, little video this week. I was thinking about doing something on the Trump indictments, but I'm going to wait until I actually read through them. I haven't had a chance yet because it's still going to stay in the news, and I'm going to have some thoughts, I'm sure. But there's something else to think about. It's the idea of, they got the culture war and some things that have happened this week. You start thinking that, you get feeling down, and then you see things that make you feel positive, then you start feeling down again because it's a constant, just slow drip, and you got to keep the pressure on. And one thing that happened in the last week is that guy went and did a song, kind of became viral, and that was Rich Men North of Richmond by a guy whose pseudonym is Anthony Oliver, or Oliver Anthony, excuse me. Now, I threw a little thing on Facebook where I said my impression of the song. The general message, dead on. The lyrics, I could do without the couple of swear words, but not bad. They're pretty good. Music, I'm not into folk music or bluegrass or anything like that. Not saying it's good, not saying it's bad. Don't have a strong opinion. I can't have a strong opinion. I can't rate it because I don't listen to that kind of music. It's a single guitar thing. The vocals of the guy singing it, though, I gotta be honest with you, his singing is like nails on chalkboard to me. And I had a couple people disagree. My wife, she liked his singing a lot better than I did. But you know what? That's okay. Not everyone's gonna like everything. But it's just one thing that's just we are right now, we're on the offense in the culture war as conservatives. And a few months ago I said, watch, they're going to rebrand ESG. And that's just another sign of it, because we've had a lot of things go on. So I found an article after my wife and I went for a walk this evening. I was like, hey, this is just perfect for what I was thinking about talking about, from the Daily Caller. Of course, that led me to a Axios article, but it says, don't fall for the left's rebranding of ESG. Something I said a couple months ago. They are trying to rebrand it. A guy named Gage Clipper with the Daily Caller, and he links to a Axios article. It says, in some ways, it appears corporate wokeness has peaked, with conservative-led public pressure mounting and tightening of the economy, raising the cost of virtue signaling. Companies are seemingly backing away from their environmental, social, and corporate governance commitments. But conservatives can't afford to get complacent. Progressive values are now deeply entrenched in corporate America. The left won't simply give up without a fight. This is absolutely true. They're entrenched. They're going to keep fighting. They're going to rebrand it, find a new name. You got to remember, at one time they were progressives, then they were liberals, and they've tried to call themselves democratic socialists. You could say, Democrats in general would be a name you could apply to them. And they tried to call themselves progressives again. They keep trying to change the name. They're really all a bunch of authoritarian megalomaniacs who just want power. Ultimately, that's what they are. But they'll just keep changing their names, because once you get it noted that they're one thing, they'll change the name. Now they're trying to run from the term woke. And the term woke to mean like an awakened person who's woken up to what's going on, being used in the leftist context. I first heard from liberal people. I'm like, what is woke? And I'm reading this post by this friend, and I finally realized, oh, this is somebody who's basically acting like, have you woken up yet? It was right after Trump got elected. And of course, they don't like real hard definitions, because that pins them down to anything. And then it says, first, the good news. S&P Global, the international debt rating agency, has dropped ESG scores from their calculation to assess companies' debt risk. The Financial Times reported the agency began including ESG scores, which launder left winged identity politics and climate goals into corporate bureaucracies under the guise of financial sustainability. We've seen how that has worked, of course, because we had some banks basically fail because of it, including the second largest bank in Europe, or Swiss bank. In 2021, in truly dystopian fashion, a poor S&P score from S&P on something like insufficiently radical diversity training could make it more expensive for a company to borrow money. This incentivized conformity to left-wing ideology and punished companies who resisted. And I've even seen trying to push it into other stuff. I think some people, whether they're just doing the die cult, the diversity, equity, and inclusion, or some other aspect of it, trying to push into things that don't need to. Volunteer organizations where you're just, hey, if somebody wants to say, I want to do this, let's do it. And it's like, please, we will take you. We don't care what your skin color is, or your gender, real or imagined, or your religion, or who you like to go out on a date with. We don't care. We need it's a volunteer organization, or we're trying to spread our activity, and some people still want to push it into that. Now the agency has announced it will replace numerical ESG scores with analytical narrative paragraphs, which is a lot easier for investors to ignore. Basically, a bunch of gobbledygook that you just scroll past because you're looking for the tables that actually show you the information you want. As one business professor told FT, the move was just the latest example of a company crumpling in the face of Republican attacks, with the backlash mounting against woke companies like Bud Light and red states investigating into S&P's practices, reshaping the narrative around ESG. Conservatives deserve to take a victory lap. Conservative grassroots pressures combined with bold leadership certainly made a difference here. And I'm going to be bringing up a couple other things here as part of this. But conservatives should not confuse winning the battle with winning the war. Shortly after the announcement, Axios declared that corporate America is rebranding ESG with 165 pieces of anti-ESG legislation introduced. Republican states talk of ESG in corporate earnings calls has declined 64% since its peak at the end of 2021. But it doesn't mean they've changed their mind. It just means big businesses are being more judicious about how they proceed. For the left, judicious just means sneaky, and it does. They're going to find other ways to work it in somewhere by changing the name, putting in a bunch of fanciful language, putting in a bunch of text that the average person doesn't want to read through because it doesn't look relevant to what they really want to know, which is the bottom line on their stocks. Nobody wants to be the next Bud Light. For non-consumer facing companies, Republicans can investigate the practices, greatly increasing the cost of doing business. But at the same time, companies can't just abandon the theory behind ESG as still a guiding elite ideology for those with institutional power in Washington and on Wall Street and throughout corporate America. And this is where the culture war is important. Institutional power, getting in there. I shared recently on Facebook a picture where a teacher had her Pride Progress flag up, and how the vice principal came in and told her as she was setting up her classroom, looks good. Institutional power. That's right in the schools. Now, she doesn't have to get out and talk about gender ideology every day. She just needs to have the symbols there, make them seen. Maybe do a little thing here or there. And make sure to correct, in quotation marks, anybody who, if a kid says, but my dad says there's only two genders, which is the truth, and you'll maybe mock that child. And hopefully that doesn't happen very often, but unfortunately it probably does. The fact is that if teachers feel enough guts to post about doing that stuff, it's not just, there's others that approve of it, but maybe don't themselves, or administrators to do that, like that. Vice principal. When you can make music or other entertainments that say Look, let's be all pro LBGTQ alphabet mafia. You have institutional power. As a policy paper from the Committee for Economic Development notes, most companies are pursuing ESG because their various stakeholders want them to, not because of politics. But that's why their stakeholders want them to. In this new world, CEOs are more interested in their responsibility to society, while the generational change in employees has led to pressures from below. Additionally, business value is increasingly tied to brand value and implicit admission that brand virtue signaling is about shoring up the bottom line. But if it was all about the bottom line, you wouldn't do some of this stuff. You wouldn't offend customers and then refuse to apologize like Bud Light. It's hard to believe that corporate leaders really care about their social responsibility. Rather, ESG works as a sort of protection racket from the federal government and dominant institutional investors like BlackRock and Vanguard. The Biden administration has worked aggressively to foist ESG on companies through the Securities and Exchange Commission, while vetoing Republican attempts to minimize its stranglehold on the private sector. Meanwhile, the big investment firms have shares in nearly all the companies in the S&P 500, which they can use to pressure CEOs. Those who resist open themselves up to legal challenges for hurting shareholder interests and potentially risking their own careers or big business. Big money bonuses. And in the Biden administration, they've even tried to use that for government contracting. You don't have a sufficient diversity, equity, inclusion plan, you might not get your contract. You don't have a sufficient environmental plan, you're not getting the contract. I think I did a video on that, as I recall. At the same time, many in the younger generations, which now make up the rank and file of workers, are true believers in ESG. As the policy paper notes, younger workers are less likely to get married early, participate in organized religion, or become active in social Rotary clubs. These are the kind of things us that are against ESG need to be promoting. Give people something to believe in, otherwise somebody else is going to do it. Thus, they find meaning in a new type of religion. Since work is their principal connection to society, they then push their employers to conform to their perception of doing good in the world, which is a sad account of the younger generations. It means that wokeness is deeply entrenched in collective psyche of corporate America. Given pressure from within and without, corporate wokeness will not be rooted out so easily. Instead, the messaging around ESG is about to get a whole lot more ambiguous and difficult to fight, which is absolutely true. Expect more talk about sustainable investing and fighting the climate crisis. Green New Deal policies will be justified under maximizing shareholder value and meeting regulatory burdens. Corporate diversity officers might be getting laid off, but companies are still gearing up to defend their affirmative action hiring decisions in light of the recent Supreme Court blow to racialized college admissions. And so that's the Daily Caller article, and I will link. That is going to be the first link in the description. Axios, the Axios article, which is linked in the Daily Caller, but I'm going to link directly to it. It talks about ESG has PR problems. Why it matters: just because the term ESG has fallen out of favor does not mean these initiatives are dying off. Corporate communicators and other business leaders have simply become more judicious about how and when to message about them. Yeah, if you don't talk about it, you just do it. You can hide it better. And it gives some of the backup to it and some good links. And then at the end it said the reality check, and this is where it's kind of full of it. Extreme weather could have something to do with the growing anti-woke sentiment, as record-breaking heat is noticeably hindering the U.S. economy. Record-breaking heat is going to have nothing to do with diversity, equity, and inclusion or other social goals, the alphabet mafia, that kind of stuff. They're just trying to shift it all to environmental stuff, and that's not the entire be-all end-all, because any company needs to continue, think about its future. I get it. Whether it's dealing with regulatory stuff or with knowing that you've got a business to sell something in the future. but some of this stuff goes completely wacky. But here's where we're winning in the culture wars. They're hiding ESG. All right. Bud Light recently released its last quarter earnings. Their sales in North America were overall was down almost $400 million. In fact, their sales in Canada were up, with AB InBev, which means when it was all of North America and it's down, it's even down worse than the United States. It's down 10%. That's a huge impact. And yet they won't apologize. And this is why this is so entrenched in there. Disney lost $900 million on 8 films. A lot of them pushing the Alphabet Mafia stuff. People don't want to see it. A lot of people they've lost a few billion on their streaming service. I was thinking about getting Disney Plus back right around 2020 when The Mandalorian was new, or right after 2020 maybe. And I thought about it and said, I'll hold off, for that time being. Things are kind of tight. And then they fired Gina Carano, and I saw a post by Disney saying, "Are you excited for this on Disney Plus?" And I just said, "Have you hired back Gina Carano yet?" I used to go to see all the Marvel movies. Had a sort of girlfriend I went and saw a lot of them with, and I had some other friends I went and saw when she went her own path. I haven't seen anything hardly. I think anything after Black Widow, I don't think I saw in the theaters, because Black Widow, of course, got delayed post-pandemic, and I want to watch them in the order, and honestly, but I'm not in a hurry. And I've liked the Marvel movies, but if all you're going to do is preach at me with some sort of message, I'm turned off. A lot of people are turned off. They've been turned off for a long time. What Gina Carano posted that got her fired was nothing to fire anybody over. In fact, things that were worse objectively, as far as comparing anybody to victims of the Holocaust, was posted by liberals well before her, and they were okay posting it. There is a double standard if you're going to allow your actors to, unless you're going to say part of your contract is you do not post on politics and religion, period, because while you represent us in any way, shape, or form, you got to let it be both sides. So I don't need Disney Plus. I honestly don't need the Amazon Prime account or my wife paying for Netflix. We still have those. Don't need YouTube TV, honestly. I can find ways to watch stuff for free in an era of cord cutting. It's convenient. I get to watch some stuff as I want to. But do I really need it? Target, they were down, I think, roughly $1 billion when I looked on their last quarter, and they're hurting hard because they targeted, even when they weren't saying, "Oh, this swimsuit isn't meant for children that's tuck friendly," it was right next to the kids' stuff, or within sight of it, and in sizes that some, at least older kids, might wear. People had a backlash. People are offended by it. People are tired of the constantly bashing conservatives of any kind, never showing them in a positive light, and always pushing a left-wing agenda. A lot of people are tired of it. That's why Richmond, north of Richmond, spoke to people. It is about grievances, and some of them are very legit. I'm sorry, but when you have people talking about somebody that doesn't work, and they're obese, and they're eating on the taxpayer dime, how do you think you're going to feel if you're working all day? If you're working 40, 50, 60 hours a week, you're going to be pretty aggravated. How are you going to feel when you see other people getting treated special, or you see money going overseas to another country? and people need, and things need to be done here that aren't getting done, or even just balancing the budget. You're going to be tired of it. The Sound of Freedom. It blew Indiana Jones out of the water. That movie never should have. There is absolutely a market. I have said this for a long time. There's a market for stuff aimed at conservatives. But Hollywood has not been willing to produce it. Daily Wire is trying. Timcast is trying to create the idea of creating culture. And it can't be all on one, but you know what we also have to do? We have to consume it, or it's not going to be created. I went and saw the God's Not Dead movies several years ago, not because they were cinematic masterpieces. Now, having a lady friend want to go see them certainly helped, but I wanted to support conservative content, and we have to do that. And it doesn't even have to be overtly religious like God's Not Dead. If you remember Duck Dynasty, conservatives loved it. It wasn't overly religious. What did you see at the end of the show, of every episode? The family sits down at a gathering and says grace before dinner. And they're not made to look like idiots. And my battery's getting low. But I'll shut that screen off. But that's where it's going. So there is a market for that. We have to make our own animated stuff. We have to make our own comics if we have to. We're tired of them, race swapping, gender swapping, sexuality swapping, religion swapping characters just because somebody wants to do it. If we have to create our own characters, fine. If liberals don't like it, tough. Make the stuff that inspires us. But this is all a sign that we are winning when they're being forced to bend the knee to us. If they're saying, we need to rethink our pride stuff. Maybe we shouldn't advertise in certain ways. Maybe we shouldn't be quite so out there with what we say for our investment decisions. I remember dealing with a certain bank, and I wasn't one I normally deal with, but for other reasons I had to go deal with them, and I see that they are advertising how they only give out loans for socially responsible stuff. I'm thinking, what do you qualify as socially responsible? So we are winning in the culture war. Doesn't mean we're going to keep winning unless we keep the pressure on. So that does not mean it's time to go buy that Bud Light just yet. Doesn't mean it's time to go and watch whatever without thinking about who makes it. I'm not interested in getting Disney Plus anytime soon. And they've lost a lot of money. And there is good content that I would want to watch. But guess not. And some of these studios got to think about what their fan bases are like. I got kicked out of 2 Star Trek forums or groups just for having wrong things. I didn't harass anybody. Didn't say anything hateful. In fact, one of them I just said, I just by becoming known that I was conservative, someone says, tagged an admin and said this, and I'm gone. I'm really liking the one that says no politics, but you can't, there are times not to talk politics, but they had no problem with far left liberals talking politics. And so maybe that even means that on some of that stuff that everybody seems to like, whether it's Star Trek or Star Wars, maybe we got to create our own forums and groups. But we will win the culture war if we keep the pressure up. So until then, like, share, subscribe, you know the drill. And after that, take care.